Have you ever wondered what a lo-fi fantasy-like game might look like? Well, 9 Years of Shadows will captivate you simply from the music on the title screen. It takes place after the world has been stripped of its color and hope due to a curse that stems from the castle of Talos. You play as Europa, a warrior who has trained all her life to restore the world back to what it once was. You'll meet a magical teddy bear named Epino, who may only speak one word, but it possesses the power of healing and the ability to cleanse the corruption. But to better see if this could be a game for you, tune into my thoughts on 9 Years of Shadows. As I mentioned, the opening theme will draw you in, and the music continues to play as the soul of the game. Each song complements the setting wonderfully as you explore the various parts of the castle in search of the elemental relics. Each different zone you cover has a plentiful amount of secrets for you to find, and in classic Metroidvania fashion, you are rewarded for revisiting certain areas in order to upgrade Europa's abilities. These upgrades will come in handy as you progress due to the increasing challenge of the enemies and environments. The enemies in 9 Years of Shadows involve corrupted guards, creatures, and hunters, which each have a weakness based on a certain element, and who doesn't love having a bestiary to learn a bit about the lore? Now, even though there's a wide variety of these enemy types, they do become a bit exhausting, as instead of having unique ones for each zone, you might just find the same enemy with a slightly different attack or color scheme. Each zone plays and feels differently due to the amazing pixel art and focus on elements, and you'll also occasionally run into these cool little cutscenes. Now, instead of just unlocking a new item that allows you access to a new zone, you're actually gaining an ability that will help you traverse the castle utilizing the environment, which just helps build that immersion. Whether it be swimming up waterfalls in the Forgotten Pond or wandering through the poisonous eucalyptus gardens, it feels great to utilize these abilities and get that sense that you're becoming stronger. Now, some of my favorite parts of the game involve these portrait sections, and without getting into too many spoilers, these areas really bring the fantasy element to 9 Years of Shadows, as they don't actually take place within the castle and are a great change of pace. This isn't a complete isolation game, as you'll meet plenty of NPCs from the Symphony who will offer you side quests, which usually involve fighting some sort of mini-boss. As you find more of these characters, the theater room really begins to fill up and acts like the main hub of the game. The atmosphere of 9 Years of Shadow, in its simplest terms, is basically when lo-fi meets fantasy, and obviously the gorgeous pixel art helps amplify this. However, the combat isn't anything that stuck out to me, but the usage of elements is where the game really shines. For a better perspective, the fluidity and movement felt most similar to Symphony of the Night, but that's also because you have the backdash to quickly evade enemies. Other than the movement and backdash, you begin with the basic light and heavy attack, which you can combo to create more damage. This could be a personal gripe of mine, but I like when enemies react to your attacks. However, there's not much reaction here, and it really becomes a game of button mashing and evading when need be. With that being said, that's the negative aspect to the core gameplay. 9 Years of Shadows also adds plenty of other variables to the experience that makes the gameplay more engaging than just the basic light and heavy attacks. Epino isn't just a character that floats around you. You have full control over him with the right analog stick if you're using a controller, and you'll be utilizing his ranged attacks to fight enemies and to open doors. As you progress, you're not just upgrading Europa, but you're also gaining abilities for Epino that will help you gain access to new areas. At the core, the magical teddy bear is used as support for ranged attacks and for health purposes. Once your light bar runs out, you're susceptible to taking damage, and you can only take 2 hits when you start out, so it's vital to make sure that light bar always has something in it. I'll be honest, I didn't really find myself too intrigued with the game until I unlocked the Poseidon armor, and this allows you to swim up waterfalls, perform underwater dash attacks, and really became a staple in traversing the castle. As you continue to unlock other abilities, you'll begin to merge all the elements into the platforming and exploration, and this is where the game really shines. You can now attack enemies based on their weaknesses, and you can switch your armor with a simple click of a button. I enjoyed returning to previous areas using a new ability so that I could find either musical notes emotes or armor, which you can then use to upgrade Europa's health, magic, or defense. Now, a lot of Metroidvanias can become exhausting with the surplus amount of backtracking. However, in 9 Years of Shadows, I didn't really find myself getting lost much, and Europa moves quick, so even during the times you need to backtrack, you're able to get to where you need to be without that frustration. And if you come across one of these doors, then I think you know what might be next. The bosses of 9 Years of Shadows can be both underwhelming and amazing. Now that might sound a bit confusing, so let me explain. There's two groups of bosses. You have these sort of mini bosses which could be either a part of the core story, or they may be part of a side mission. An earlier one I faced is named Ulf, and you get this nice dialogue sequence before the fight. However, he ended up really only having one attack, and even though I struggled at the start, I quickly figured out his pattern. The other ones I've faced have not been the most challenging, but I'm still glad that they're in the game as it's a nice sense of reward considering they're optional bosses. The core bosses, however, I found to be a great time. There's a much larger sense of scale, they're significantly more challenging, and they have more than one phase. You'll be utilizing your elemental abilities and are forced to memorize the many attacks that each boss carries. However, my favorite thing about these fights is undoubtedly the music. It really helps intensify each battle, and because a lot of the bosses are large in size, you really do feel outmatched. Every time you defeat one of these guys, it truly does feel as if you've earned it. As much as I'd like to break down and discuss some of these bosses, I don't want to get too deep into spoilers. 9 Years of Shadows is a fleshed out Metroidvania that offers plenty of exploration and is beautiful to look at. However, it does have its flaws such as the lack of enemy diversity and the occasional repetitive combat. But if you're looking for a game with an amazing soundtrack, some fantastic large-scale boss fights, and some creatively fluid gameplay, then 9 Years of Shadow may be something you're looking for. It's releasing on Steam, however, you should be able to find it on the Switch later this year. If you do plan to play this title on Steam, then I highly recommend you use a controller. I'd like to thank Freedom Games for giving me early access so that I was able to get this review out alongside the release date. Let me know in the comments below what your initial thoughts are on 9 Years of Shadows, and if you like indie or Nintendo games, then do please leave a like and subscribe as you can expect to find plenty of similar content. So until next time.